Let's get to Coca-Cola, another earnings mover today, out with results. The soft drinks giant beating earnings estimates and also sticking with its full-year guidance with minimal tariff disruption.
Wait, is Coca-Cola really quitting America? That's not just a rumor anymore. It's a real question. And if true, it could be the most shocking corporate exit in decades. For generations, Coca-Cola wasn't just a soda. It was America. In red and white, from battlefields in World War II, to Friday night football games, to your grandma's fridge. But now, insiders suggest the company is considering pulling major operations out of the United States. And the reason? Trump's tariffs. That's right. The trade war that was meant to protect American jobs may be driving one of the most iconic American brands to leave the country. And it gets worse. There are whispers, unconfirmed but growing louder, of a possible billion-dollar lawsuit brewing in the shadows, tied directly to the economic fallout from these tariffs. So what does it all mean if Coca-Cola, a company that built its legacy on American soil, is thinking of packing up and leaving? What does that say about where we are as a country? And more importantly, what does that mean for you? For workers, for small towns, for the millions of families who've relied on this brand for jobs, identity, and stability. Because if Coke can leave, who's next? Let's break it all down. What's real? What's rumor? And why this might be the biggest warning sign America's economy has seen in years. But before we dive in, if this hits close to home, if you believe this story needs to be told, like this video, subscribe for the truth, and share it with someone who still believes in the American dream. Let's begin. You can't talk about Coca-Cola's crisis without talking about tariffs. And not just any tariffs. We're talking about the aggressive, across-the-board Trump tariffs that hit global trade like a freight train. At first, they were sold to the public as a patriotic move. Protect American jobs, level the playing field, bring manufacturing back home. But what if the very policies designed to save American industry are now putting its most iconic brands at risk? Let's break it down. In 2018, President Trump slapped new tariffs on imported aluminum, the stuff that makes up every Coca-Cola can on your grocery store shelf. Prices didn't just rise, they spiked. Within months, the cost of aluminum shot up, not just from China, but even from allies like Canada, where a huge chunk of US beverage-grade aluminum comes from. Coca-Cola, like many American companies, runs on an international supply chain. Their cans, their machinery, even their sweeteners and flavorings, they don't all come from the US. And when you suddenly make those imports more expensive, you don't just hurt the foreign suppliers, you hit American factories, American workers, American budgets. Coca-Cola's CEO, James Quincy, made it clear, these tariffs are squeezing the system. Tight margins are getting tighter, and even a few cents increase per can, when multiplied across billions of units, becomes a serious threat to profitability. So here's the real question. If you're a global company like Coke, do you eat those costs and risk shareholder revolt? Or do you look elsewhere to operate more efficiently? Now, some reports, though unconfirmed, suggest that Coca-Cola may be exploring ways to shift operations abroad. Not to betray America, but to survive. Think about that. The policy that was meant to bring jobs back might be the same policy that pushes one of America's most recognized companies to pack up and leave. So no, this isn't just about economics. This is about unintended consequences. This is about the first domino that tipped, and may now lead to an avalanche. Because when the system becomes too costly to stay in, even the loyal may start looking for the door. And that brings us to the next big question. Is Coca-Cola, the very symbol of American capitalism, really preparing to quit the United States? Let's go deeper. Could it really happen? Could Coca-Cola, the red-blooded, all-American icon, actually quit the country it was born in? It sounds unthinkable, unpatriotic, even impossible. But according to recent insider chatter, industry analysts, and subtle shifts in Coca-Cola's global strategy, it might not be so far-fetched. Let's be clear, Coca-Cola hasn't officially announced a move, but something is happening. Sources close to the company say it's exploring options. That includes re-evaluating its North American footprint, restructuring certain regional operations, and possibly relocating parts of its headquarters functions abroad. Why? Because the economics are starting to make relocation look attractive. Trump's tariffs didn't just increase production costs, they shattered predictability. And for global companies like Coca-Cola, uncertainty is poison. Investors want stability. Boards demand efficiency. Margins are non-negotiable. So when countries like Germany, Ireland, or the Netherlands offer lower corporate taxes, access to massive markets, and, most importantly, smooth, tariff-free trade routes, suddenly, staying loyal to American soil becomes a liability. One former Coca-Cola exec even hinted, off the record, that if the numbers make more sense abroad, we'd be crazy not to consider it. Now imagine that. Imagine Coca-Cola, whose ads once dripped with American flags and 4th of July fireworks, printing "Made in the EU" on the side of every can. Is it betrayal, or is it survival? That's what Americans are wrestling with right now. In the YouTube comments, one viewer put it bluntly, "My dad worked for Coke for 32 years. If they leave, it's like losing family." That's the emotional cost. It's not just about soda. It's about trust, about feeling like even the most loyal companies are walking away. And here's the kicker. If Coca-Cola does make that move, you can bet it won't be the last, because the second a giant takes the leap, the rest start lining up behind them. So the question isn't just, is Coca-Cola leaving? The real question is, what kind of country are we becoming? If companies feel safer setting up shop somewhere else. And that leads us straight into the next chapter. What happens if they actually leave? What does it mean for real people, real towns, real lives? Let's say Coca-Cola does move operations abroad. What happens next? We're not just talking about executive desks and tax filings. We're talking about real jobs, real people, real pain. Because when a company like Coca-Cola leaves a town, it doesn't just shut off a factory, it shuts down a heartbeat. In dozens of towns across America, Coca-Cola is the local economy. You've got generations of workers, fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, who've built their lives around that bottling plant, paychecks, healthcare, retirement. Local restaurants stay open because Coke workers grab lunch there. High school football fields get new bleachers thanks to Coke sponsorships. Small towns survive on those partnerships. So when that factory closes, it's not just a pink slip, it's a funeral for the middle class. One viewer wrote in the comments, "My brother lost his job when the plant in our town shut down. The town lost its spirit, not just its income." That's the part nobody talks about on Wall Street. They measure profits, but not pain. Now imagine this playing out not in just one town, but across the country. A slow, quiet collapse, where pride fades, where people stop believing that working hard will ever be enough. And it cuts even deeper when it's a brand like Coca-Cola. Because Coke didn't just sell soda, it sold American identity. It was there in World War II, in Super Bowl commercials, on every diner table from Kansas to California. So when that kind of symbol packs up and leaves, people don't just feel unemployed, they feel abandoned. They feel like even the companies they trusted most no longer think America is worth staying for. That's not just economic damage, that's a crack in the foundation of who we think we are. Because if the American brand doesn't believe in America anymore, then who will? And while executives talk about margins and efficiencies, there's one conversation happening around kitchen tables that no one wants to admit. If Coca-Cola leaves, what does that mean for me? Will my job be next? Will my town disappear? Will my kids even believe in this country? Those questions are why this story matters more than any headline. And now, let's talk about the other ticking bomb, the one that could explode in court. Let's talk about that billion-dollar lawsuit and what it could really mean. What if this story doesn't end with a company leaving? What if it ends in court? Because while most people are focused on whether Coca-Cola will move operations overseas, there's a quieter, more dangerous storm brewing, a potential billion-dollar lawsuit. Now, to be clear, no official lawsuit has been filed, but behind closed doors, corporate lawyers are watching, shareholders are whispering, and some legal insiders are suggesting that if the fallout from Trump's tariffs results in massive financial losses, someone's going to pay. And it might not be Coca-Cola. Here's how it could happen. If companies like Coke can prove that these tariffs, these abrupt, aggressive policy changes, directly harmed their ability to operate, grow, or compete, they might have legal grounds to seek damages, especially if investors believe the government created a hostile business environment that forced companies to move and wiped out billions in shareholder value. Think about it. A lawsuit of that size, that scale, that would be historic. It wouldn't just be about trade, it would be about accountability. Because if the courts get involved, they won't just ask, what happened? They'll ask, who's responsible? Now imagine the optics of that. An American company, one of the most beloved, most profitable, most symbolic brands in the country, dragging a trade policy into court. It could split the business world in two. Supporters of America First economics will say, they're just chasing profits. But critics will argue, this is what happens when policy is made for headlines, not stability. And lost in the middle, the workers, the investors, the everyday families who suffer from the fallout, but don't get a say in the decisions. One retired Coke employee wrote in a comment, "We gave our lives to this company. If they sue, it won't just be about money. It'll be about telling the truth." That's the real bombshell. Because a lawsuit like this won't just ask legal questions. It'll demand moral answers. Was the American government protecting workers or putting them at risk? Did the tariffs make us stronger or break our backbone? And most importantly, if Coke is ready to take this fight to court, even just hypothetically, what does that say about how bad things have gotten? This isn't just a business story anymore. It's a story about power, about pressure, and about whether we've lost control of the system we were promised would protect us. So what happens if we don't fix it? Let's bring it all home in the next chapter. So where does that leave us? We started with a simple, shocking question. Is Coca-Cola really quitting America? And while we may not have a final answer, the fact that we're even asking it says everything. We walked through the fallout of Trump's tariffs, how they raised costs, broke supply chains, and shook confidence in the US market. We looked at the real-world impact, American jobs on the line, small towns in fear, and communities wondering if their economic lifelines are about to vanish. We explored the emotional weight, the feeling of economic betrayal, when a brand that once represented American pride starts looking for a way out. And we exposed the legal tension simmering beneath the surface, the possibility of a billion-dollar lawsuit that could explode if this pressure keeps building. So here's what it all comes down to. This isn't just about Coca-Cola. It's about what kind of country we're becoming. A country where companies no longer feel safe to stay, where loyalty is punished, and where the workers, the people who built these brands, get left behind. And if you feel like something's off, you're not alone. One comment said it best. It's not just Coke, it's everything. It feels like America is slipping away. But maybe it's not too late. Maybe this moment, this story, can be a wake-up call. To rethink how we treat American business, to remember why Made in America once meant something, and to speak up before more giants walk away. So what can you do? Start by sharing this video. Send it to someone who's worked in a factory, someone who believes in fairness, someone who still cares about this country. Like the video. Subscribe if you want more truth like this. And comment below. Tell us your story. Because what happens next depends on whether we stay silent or speak loud. This is bigger than soda. This is about America. And the question now is, will we fight to keep it or just let it go?